What are some common facts that people believe to be true even if the existing evidence states the contrary? It is rarely necessary to wait 24 hours before filing a missing person report. Yup, our police has this listed on their Facebook page as a common myth. A person drowning is not likely to be flailing wildly and yelling like in the movies. Drowning can often happen with mostly silence, especially with kids. Read up on the signs. It might save a life. I was drowning and lost consciousness when I was 5. I was told I barely made a sound. I went under, sucked in lungs full of water when I tried to cry out in surprise and blacked out. If it wasn't for my dad's instincts and quick action, I'd be dead. The most violent arguments I've had have been convincing patients with a viral cold that they don't need antibiotics. I remember a documentary a few years back about a GP's practice here in the UK, basically filming patients, with their permission, to show a day-to-day. They literally had people come in and answer, "What's the matter today?" with "I need some antibiotics." They didn't even elaborate on why, just "I need some antibiotics." Vikings never actually drank from skulls of enemies. This was based on a mistranslation of Old Norse poetry in which they refer to drinking from horns. They never had horns on their helmets either. Even as a kid, I thought that would be wildly inconvenient. The enemy could knock the helmet off of you super easily. That 30 used to be considered ancient back when the average lifespan was 25 or whatever. The average is offset by a huge number of child deaths. 30 was never ancient. Even hunter-gatherer societies had people routinely living into their 60s. Cracking your knuckles too often will give you arthritis. Nope. No conclusive study has ever backed this up. It just releases the gas from the synovial fluid in your joints, which is neither good nor bad. There is in fact a guy who spent 60 years cracking the knuckles on his left hand twice daily, and there was no resulting difference in his hands. A lot of people think they can burn belly fat by doing crunches or slim their arms down by doing push-ups, but targeted fat loss isn't possible and there's no evidence to suggest it is. That Einstein was a bad student, and was bad at math. It's just not true. He got average high marks, and was really just disdainful of the structure of school, and he was good at math. Physics is like 90% math. I get why people share it. It's to make struggling students feel better about themselves. But can't we tell them about something else instead of lying? A few people still believe that opening windows before a tornado to even the pressure will save their house from damage. Some also still believe trailer parks attract tornadoes and that random sacred landmarks can protect cities from tornadoes. The first part of that does have some merit though. Opening up all your windows will effectively reduce the total force being exerted on the walls from the outside wind, since some of that airflow is allowed to pass through the wall instead of acting upon it. However, considering how strong the winds are in a tornado and how small most windows are, the effect may as well be irrelevant. Opening your windows to reduce the damage from the winds of a tornado is probably about as effective as planting shrubbery to reduce the damage from an oncoming avalanche. Your heart stops when you sneeze. I mean, have you seen my dad sneeze? No wonder the heart needs a break. Dad sneezes are a different game. That if you touch a baby animal, like a bird or rabbit, its mother will neglect it and it will die. That is a myth. It was just a way for parents to get their kids to leave baby animals alone. Yeah, a few weeks ago, a baby bird fell out of its nest in our backyard. It survived and my dad was going to put it out of its misery until I told him that this myth wasn't true. We put it in a cardboard box on the table closest to its tree with some food and water and just left it alone. Its parents found it the next day and were bringing it food. Within a couple of days, it was gone. When you swallow gum, it stays in your body for 7 years. I'm guessing this was made up by parents to keep kids from swallowing bubble gum, though I'm not really sure why that would be a problem. Choking hazard maybe? If the police arrest you and do not read your rights, the case will automatically be thrown out. That only invalidates any interrogation they conduct. Lightning never strikes twice in the same place. In fact it does, and frequently. You don't want to be there when it happens. Carrots make you see better. It was made up by the British Army when they got their new guidance system. Carrots can actually blind you if you try to eat them in the dark while really drunk. Trust me, I tried stabbing carrots into my eyes and they didn't help my sight any, so that is definitely fake news. I scrolled fairly far down and did not see what came to mind for me. A lot of people think blood is blue inside of the body, and that it only appears red because of the oxygen or something in the air. I tried to explain this to a past co-worker, who was a former nurse, and she wasn't having any of it. Turns out a lot of otherwise smart people believe that with no evidence. But blood is always red, just darker at some points of circulation in the body. People still think an undercover cop has to tell you they're a cop. How does that even make sense? Months of preparations ruined on the first day because someone happened to ask the magic question. Cops are allowed to lie to you and they will pretend to be your friend to get what they need from you. Side note, even if you're innocent of a crime, the first words from your mouth should be "I want a lawyer," and you don't provide any information until you have one. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. Chicken is cooked when it is no longer pink and the juices run clear. In fact, it's cooked when it hits 75°C, 165°F, and that's it. What it looks like depends on the cut. Chicken breast often has significant pink in it when it hits the temperature, which is why most people complain about dry boring chicken, because they overcook it. On the flip side, wings can look cooked when they aren't, which is why they're a major source of food poisoning. The most important thing I learned working in a commercial kitchen: cutting your facial hair makes it grow in thicker. I had a full-on argument with an individual who firmly believed that genetics played no possible role in hair growth whatsoever. I have never been more perplexed or angry in my entire life. Sincerely, Bald at 25. That cow is giving milk because that's how this animal work. They don't believe me when I'm telling them that she needs to have baby to start producing milk. Worms come out when it rains because they are drowning in their holes. No, not really. They mostly come out because when it rains heavily, they are able to survive on the surface for much longer and move around, finding new areas to feed and more worms to breed with. Vaccines cause autism. Andrew Wakefield's study, The Epicenter of Vaccine Causes Autism, had no control group and had just 12 participants. Multiple large studies conducted by CDC, AAP, NHS found no link between vaccination and autism. An investigation by journalist Brian Deere found that Wakefield had multiple undeclared conflicts of interest, had manipulated evidence, and had broken other ethical codes. The Lancet paper was partially retracted in 2004 and fully retracted in 2010. Wakefield's medical license was revoked for serious professional misconduct. Still, there are a lot of idiots bring that fraudulent paper as an evidence. Camels don't use their humps to store water. They use them to store fat reserves, because storing fat reserves around the body like humans would keep them too warm. So they have it all in one spot. 420 did not originate from the LA Police or Penal Code for marijuana use. The use of 420 started in 1971 at San Rafael High School, where it indicated the time, 4:20, when a group of students would go to smoke. Alpha theory and dog training. The researcher that originally described the dominance theory was watching captive wolves at a zoo pack that was artificially created from unrelated specimens. The hierarchy in this curated collection was determined through fights and struggles for dominance, and this dynamic was then applied to domestic dogs and how they view themselves in relation to humans. This drove the dominate your dog style of training popular with Cesar Millan and his acolytes. When the scientific community was able to observe a wild wolf pack, however, they discovered that wild packs are family units and operate much the same way, with a parental breeding pair at the top and their younger offspring forming the pack, sometimes several litters at a time. As the pups grow older, they break off and form their own packs. The researcher that dismantled the theory, David Meck, described it thusly: attempting to apply information about the behavior of assemblages of unrelated captive wolves to the familial structure of natural packs has resulted in considerable confusion. Such an approach is analogous to trying to draw inferences about human family dynamics by studying humans in refugee camps. There is no requirement to wait an hour after eating before swimming. That women's V's get loose when they've had a lot of sex. They can squeeze out a whole human baby and people still think a D will permanently deform them. That your political party is 100% correct and that the other is 100% wrong. That punk in the UK was a reaction response to Margaret Thatcher. Punk broke in the UK in 1976-7, when the sitting government was Labour, or an alliance of Labour and other left-wing parties. Thatcher's Conservatives weren't elected until 1979. Sugar rushes. Some studies were done and it's mainly just little kids acting like little kids, and their parents expecting them to act up after having sugar from decades of saying that's what is supposed to happen. No evidence actually points to them being any more worked up. It's something I've brought up and been ridiculed for it, and despite saying just Google it, I'm still perceived as wrong. The fact that resistant and proof, i.e. water resistant and waterproof, is two separate things and are not the same. There is so many people that believe them to be the same. That the flu vaccine causes you to get the flu. I hear this every single year. I got the shot and 24 hours later I got the flu. That strawberries are actually berries and watermelons aren't. A dog or cat having a wet, dry, cold, warm nose doesn't mean it. It's an old wives' tale. Now if there's coughing, sneezing or discharge from the nose or eyes, then take your pet to vet. Video games cause real-life violence. There have been several studies disproving this. He shot up a church and played Animal Crossing beforehand. Doesn't sound like a coincidence to me. People believe Listerine is a more effective mouthwash because of the taste it leaves in your mouth. But actually gargling with warm salt water is a more effective way to kill the bacteria in your mouth. Some people believe the word nuclear to be pronounced as nuclear, despite the lack of a U vowel between the C and L within the word. I just shoehorned that response into this post because it sort of doesn't belong here, but still gets on my nerves. That Muslims have a completely unique deity named Allah. He's exactly the same entity as the Judeo-Christian God, Jehovah. Allah is the Arabic word for God. Arabic-speaking Christians pray to Allah too. It's insane the number of adults I know that think blood is blue inside the body, and only turns red when it is exposed to air. Having a baby will save your relationship or make an irresponsible man suddenly man up for his family. Babies only amplify all your existing problems and you should not have them until you are ready. The war on drugs was successful. In fact, it's one of the worst policies in American history. That the sex of a child is determined by the woman. The actual case is that the lucky sperm of the man determines the sex. It is more often than not a 50/50 on male or female offspring. You can't jump into lava. It's still rock, regardless of whether it's liquid, so you would just break all your limbs against the surface. Then the water in your body would superheat and evaporate, expanding as it does and causing your body to explode in a puff of red steam. The dried remains would burn or melt away. Special relativity doesn't actually say that traveling faster than the speed of light will allow you to travel back in time. Instead, what it does say is that if you were to travel from point A to B faster than the speed of light, then it is possible for an observer to observe you traveling from B to A. Apparently that the SpaceX launches landings are fake. A lot of dumb people out there, you were seeing them on the NASA live stream chat too, weren't you? McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit is an example of a frivolous lawsuit. McDonald's was told multiple times by the health department not to serve coffee so hot. Her wounds were horrendous. 3rd-degree burns over her genitals. Multiple skin grafts. The only thing she asked McDonald's to do was to pay some of her medical bills. In the end, they gave her to the tune of $600. She went to court, but after the case apparently McDonald's sponsored groups against and smeared the case as a frivolous lawsuit. You don't not lose 90% if your body heat through your head. If you could, you should be able to wear a knit cap and go outside naked in the winter and make naked snow angels in your neighbor's yard and not get severe hypothermia that results in a rather embarrassing trip to the emergency room. Hypothetically. That sugarcane grows faster on sand. That sugar makes you hyper, or makes kids hyper. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. People have a perception it does though, essentially a placebo effect. That you should drink at least 2 liters of water a day. There is only some 1930 TS recommendation that you should consume about 2 liters of water a day, but it includes water in your food. Even though it is probably better to drink more water, it is not well studied and there is no scientific proof. Full stop. It was a push to get people to drink more. Now that we looked into it, we're supposed to drink way whenever we're thirsty, not a set amount. Did you know that dying young or at birth lowers the average life expectancy? Apparently most people don't. People lived into old age back in the olden times. It's just that people died in childbirth or of, now, preventable childhood diseases. So when the average life expectancy was 40, it probably meant that a lot of infants and children died. And getting married at 13 was usually a political move and not some creepy old guy marrying a child. Vitamin C boosts your immune system. Countless double-blind trials show that if you're not deficient in vitamin C, it will have no effect on your health. And if you take high vitamin C foods, the majority of it comes out in your waste. Not sure if this is a fact, but some people still believe that opposites attract, even though we're attracted to people who look like us and has the same likes as us. So I have a Geiger counter, and sometimes I'll bring it out just for fun when I'm hanging out with friends. I cannot even tell you how many people freak out when they see a number that isn't 0.00 on the screen. In reality, a little bit of radiation isn't at all dangerous. In fact, we're surrounded by ionizing radiation due to things ranging from naturally occurring elements in the soil to cosmic radiation. Levels will rise near things like granite countertops due to small amounts of thorium and uranium. During a flight, radiation levels go up by 10-25x plus what they are on the surface, due to less shielding from cosmic radiation by the atmosphere. Moral of the story, from what I've seen, people tend to think that radiation is some terrifying thing, and that it doesn't take a lot to give someone cancer or radiation sickness, when in reality, it takes a lot. That looks don't matter. Of course they do. Your physical appearance literally influences everything you do, for the better or worse, and it's much more influential than people would want to believe. The CIA funded Osama bin Laden. While the CIA did fund a decent amount of Afghani mujahideen during the Soviet-Afghan War, just about all of them coalesced into the pro-Western Northern Alliance, the guys who fought the Taliban. During the Afghan Civil War, bin Laden's mujahideen group did not receive Western backing. In an interview he did with The Independent in 1993, bin Laden said, "Personally, neither I nor my brother saw evidence of American help. That it's illegal to turn on the overhead lamp in a vehicle. Duck you, mom and dad. I just wanted to play my Game Boy. Maybe not illegal, but it has always been super distracting to me as a driver, to the point it really does affect my ability to see. The newer cars, well, at least my minivan, have a more focused lights above each place, which is awesome. My kids can read and I don't even notice it."